It's week 15 of my Summer with Lisa Kleypas challenge, and we are going to be doing my favorite Ravenels book. I'm just going to come out and say it right out the gate. Hello, stranger. Hello, stranger. Hi, my name's B. Welcome to my channel. Mama needs to read some romance because nobody in this book is going to pour a bottle of bug spray all over our grass. Now we're itchy and we have a crummy looking lawn. After Labor Day, but my calendar says it's still summer until September 22nd, so it's still my Summer with Lisa Kleypas challenge. We are doing the best book, in my opinion, of the Ravenels. Now, I haven't read Devil in Disguise yet, so jury's still out, but I love this book so much. I was confused when I first read this book because it's about Dr. Garrett Gibson, who's not a Ravenel, and Ethan Ransom, who supposedly is also not a Ravenel. We've got a doctor and a detective who have interacted with the main characters, but I was like, why in the world are we following them? I know why, because they're awesome. And Lisa Kleypas knew she could make an incredible story. We've got the first female doctor in London. We've got a detective. There's plenty of action. There's suspense. There is a deathbed, which turns out to not be a deathbed, speech. It killed me and brought me back to life. The passion is so wonderful. The love, the respect. I just love this book so much. I've never wanted to jump into a romance novel so badly, I think. Anyway, let's take a look at the step back. We have Dr. Garrett Gibson in a gorgeous dress with Ethan Ransom, handsome detective, and they are in love. Interesting, talking about the way Ethan Ransom looks. In Devil in Spring, Gabriel asks Ethan if he was a Ravenel. And Ethan says, well, why do you think that? And Gabriel says, well, it's because you've got the same blue eyes that are ringed with black, and I've only ever seen it in Ravenels. And so he was confused. But Ethan says, well, no, my dad was a dock worker, and my mom was a woman of ill repute. So I am not a Ravenel. But maybe he's somehow tied to the Ravenels with those eyes. We shall see. I am beyond excited to be reading this book this week and sharing it with you. After this part, there are going to be spoilers, so be aware. At the end, I'm going to tell you what I believe Ethan and Garrett's song should be, and I'm also going to give this book a rating. Come and join me because who can wait one more second? Let's go. Can I even begin to describe how much I love this book? Oh my gosh, I can't. I can't. I love this book so much. Before I jump in, just the footage that you were seeing, my mom and I went to the last day of a library book sale where it was $10 to fill a bag, and I got so much good stuff. You would not believe. It's gonna be in my next book haul. I just can't wait. Okay, so moving along, let's talk about chapters 1 through 4. We start out in the action. Garrett is in a very seedy part of town doing rounds. She's checking on orphanages. She's being amazing, but some soldiers who are drunk come up to her and they attempt to assault her. She does a fine job of defending herself, but the final biggest blows are struck by someone else who she knows has been following her. She's just been able to feel it. Comes out of the shadows because she's like, you come on out now because I know you've been following me for weeks. And he goes, only on Tuesdays. And when I think about Tuesdays, I still think of this years later. I love it so much. I love that line, only on Tuesdays. And of course, that is our Ethan Ransom, fabulous detective who we find out is definitely a legend even amongst the police force. He entered and started solving cases left and right. They were like cold cases. He's incredibly able to defend himself. He has learned all these different ways of fighting. I mean, everybody thinks he is the cat's pajamas. Where did that come from? I have no idea. Anyway, my point is people are really impressed by him. And he's also extremely handsome. But why am I impressed with him? Why is he like one of my favorite male leads of all time? Because he wants to carry her bags, her medical bags, as he escorts her back to like a handsome cab. And she's like, look, I'm not just some lady, I'm a doctor. And he goes, well, can't I respect your profession while also appreciating the fact that you're a lady? I'm like, man, can I do a slow clap, please? Can we give this guy a standing ovation? I love him so much. He respects her. He is so turned on by her intelligence and her bravery and just everything she is, her beauty, her wit, her charm. I mean, her work ethic. He's just, he gets it. He gets it. He's a gentleman, although he's rough around the edges for sure. I mean, he's grown up in London. I love the respect and the love and the need that he has for her. He has tried to keep himself away from her. And so he's made a mistake by stepping out of the shadows. He's like, oh gosh. He actually asked her if he could teach her some self-defense other than the fencing she's been doing. And he said, okay, I'm gonna do 1 hour with her and then I'm done. Because as much as he wants her, which man does he ever, he knows that she could be a danger to him, and he could certainly be a danger to her because he is a detective. He does a lot of dangerous things. And he also, part of his job is being sort of secretive. And right now, Garrett Gibson is the talk of the town. She's in the papers because she's the only lady doctor. Which, by the way, I'm going to get into this more, but in the author's note in the very back of the book, her character is based on a real woman. And we'll talk more about that later, but holy cow, how awesome is that? And I love that Lisa Kleypas included that in her book. Anyway, in between their fabulous encounter in the seedy area of London and when he meets her at the fencing club to teach her some self-defense, he heads over to Winterbourne's, and Winterbourne surprises Ethan. By the way, they know each other because Winterbourne has hired Ethan quite a few times to do certain things that are dangerous. So he and Winterbourne have a great relationship, but Ethan's not thrilled that Winterbourne has surprised him with West Ravenel. Ethan hates the Ravenels. All we know is that someone in the Ravenel family did something to hurt a family member of his. That's all he's willing to share, but he hates their guts. Turns out West is there and needs to talk to Ethan because there is a big part of land in Norfolk that West and Devin would like to sell. They can't sell it because it's been put in a secret trust to Ethan, and they don't understand why. Why would the former Lord Trinia have had a secret trust for a gentleman that they don't even know? Ethan is just saying he has no idea. You know, it's interesting. You think about that in conjunction with the fact that Gabriel said, gosh, you sure do look like a Ravenel. Makes you wonder. So Winterbourne says, why don't you sell West the land? Since obviously, Ethan, you don't want the land. And Ethan's like, I'll sell it to you for £1. And West said, that's like insulting. I'm gonna figure out what it's worth. I'll buy it from you for that. I'll drop off the papers. I'll be in London for a month, so we'll figure this out. And Ethan's like, fine, whatever. No, I'm gonna go meet my lady at the fencing club. He has some interesting words for the fencing master because he says, you know what? You've trained her as just a lady for parlor show. This woman needs real self-defense. But they start working together, and of course, who is surprised to find that the chemistry between the two of them as he is teaching her moves, it's off the charts. He's soft, and she trusts him immediately. He's very careful with her, and yet he's strong at the same time. I mean, oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so good. And at one point he's showing her how to make a fist, and he's sort of tracing over her hands, and they start to have this moment where, you know, he asks her what made her become a doctor and also why is her name Garrett, and she explains that her mom died in childbirth, but before she passed away, she talked about wanting to name her child, who she believed would be a boy, after her brother Garrett, who had died young. Well, since the mother passed away in childbirth, the husband decides, Garrett's father decides to go ahead and name the baby Garrett, even though she was a girl. But she says, I think it suits me. And Ethan says, yes, I do. I just love that he loves her strength. Love it. And she asks him, well, what made you go into law enforcement? And he says, this is crazy. So his father was a prison guard, and, you know, he loved how they would restore order to things. The money that they made was not enough for the husband, wife, and for him when he was a little boy. And what would happen is his mom would go away to see some British gentleman. Who could that be? And when she'd come back, things would all of a sudden start getting paid for, and there'd be enough food on the table, and there'd be candles, and then his father would beat his mother and then beat him for trying to defend his mother. And Ethan didn't understand any of it, but he knew he was going to grow up to be someone who could protect people that couldn't protect themselves. And it's interesting, his mother said that was just the nature of men, that they would beat women, and he said, never. I would cut off my arm before I would show a woman disrespect like that. And he really means that, and he's held his own on that. It's interesting because I think part of the reason that Garrett and Ethan are so bonded like right away is because they both understand the darker side of life. I mean, they both deal with it a lot in their line of work. He with the villains and she with the victims. They've seen some stuff and they both get it, you know? So anyway, he tells her that after this, he's never going to see her again. He's got to go away. He's not willing to explain what it is. And then he starts to show her a maneuver in which he's behind her and she moves her body in such a way that they fit like puzzle pieces. Okay. And then all of a sudden he like falls away from her and leans on the ground, or he's sitting kind of pulled into himself with his head down. And she's like, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And she offers him water and he goes, "It's only going to work if you pour it down my pants." So she's sort of mortified, but also very intrigued. But now I don't think she's ever going to see him again, or at least that's what she believes. We'll see what happens next. I can't wait. Can you believe that I'm sick again? I know summer's not really over because the summer of sick has continued. 10 weeks of summer vacation, like 6 of those, at least one of the people in my family was sick, thanks to COVID half the time. And now the kids are bringing stuff home from school. So everybody was homesick today, except for my husband, but he took care of us, thank goodness. I also had time to read chapters 5 through 7. Thank goodness for this book. It's getting me through. And hopefully I'll be better by tomorrow. I'm telling you what, I was over it. But it started with Dr. Gibson having a lovely lunch, I believe, at a cafe that is highly sought after, quite popular within Winterbourne's. And of course, Helen gets the best table because her husband is the proprietor of that incredible multiple block establishment inside the heart of London. And Garrett confides in Helen that she really has feelings for Ethan. And Helen's worried because she knows, based on some stories that are circulating through the newspapers, that Ethan isn't some choir boy. He apparently went in and beat up those 3 men that tried to assault Garrett at the beginning of the book while they were in jail. He's trying to teach him a lesson. And you know how he feels about hurting women. It's not okay. But Helen is very concerned because she knows a little bit about Ethan through Reese, and she knows that Ethan, I mean, they're not even sure whose side he's on, to tell you the truth. He might be a dark guy, you know? And so Helen tells Garrett to keep her distance. And she almost gets the opposite information later. Dr. Havelock is wishing her a happy birthday at the end of their work day together. He is now married to Mrs. Fernsby, who you may remember from Marrying Winterbourne. She was the very opinionated secretary of Reese Winterbourne. She wound up marrying Dr. Havelock, which was so cute. So anyway, Dr. Havelock actually encourages Garrett to take a lover, but she goes out and she wishes that she could bump into him, and she doesn't believe she'll ever see him again, but she has the whistle that he gave her, and she blows it, and he actually just shows up. He takes her to an open party that's going on in the streets of London because Tom Severin is opening a new rail line and he's giving free rides, and people have just turned it into a festive party atmosphere. They watch fireworks at one point and he's got his arms around her and she's just nestled into his chest, and they're both looking over the fireworks. It's such a romantic moment. She has him back to her home, which he goes crazy when he realizes how unsafe the lock is, how anyone could get in. So he's trying to encourage her to get better locks on her doors, but she invites him in against his better judgment. He goes with her and she shows him around her lab and, you know, all of her equipment. And then she's open with him. She says, "I just want to see each other and just no expectations. I just want to see you." And he's like, "You've never done this before, have you?" And she says, "No." He tries to leave. She doesn't want to let him. And she pulls him down and gets him to kiss her. And that's where the chapter ends. Now, before we move on, there's something else I want to say too that I love about this book. He uses kind of like a Cockney accent with everybody else, but when he's with her, he uses real accent, which is an Irish brogue. It's amazing, and I love Mary Jane Wells doing his voice. And it's just another way that shows he only is his true self when he's around Garrett. Otherwise, he's pretending with everybody else, and he uses that fake British accent. But really, he was raised Irish before they moved to England, so interesting. Yeah, I'm stuck at the house because actually my oldest went to school today, but the other two are still sick. So I got a chance to go through my 2-year-old's library, and there you have it. It's finally organized until she decides to take it all down. But let's talk chapters 8 through 10. Chapter 8 could not be steamier. It starts out where Garrett, who's only had like 1 or 2 kisses, she tries to kiss Ethan. It is very cute at first, but then it becomes quite steamy, quite spicy. He pleasures her, and I know she would like more, but he is essentially continuing to warn her away from himself. He continues to say, we can't see each other anymore. It's not safe. And she's very upset. I mean, she's in the depths of despair, and Dr. Havelock hopes that he can help her by inviting her to a big soiree that's coming up. Meanwhile, Ethan goes to work. His superior, Jasper Jenkins, is a really bad guy, and he's got his own plans for England and the government, and he doesn't care for the Irish. So he has no qualms with doing underhanded things to make sure that the government stays the way that he wants it. He answers to no one, but people answer to him. Ethan used to really respect Jasper Jenkins and love him as a father, but now he sees how bad this man is, and Ethan doesn't trust him at all. It gets much worse though. Jenkins lets Ethan know that he knows about Garrett, and Ethan's like, oh no, I don't really care. You know, he's pretending because he's terrified of what will happen. Usually when Jenkins mentions someone's name, they don't live very long, which is terrifying. And there's another guy, Gamble. This is another guy who came up the ranks with Ethan, and the two of them have an adversarial relationship that Jenkins has really fostered. He wants them at each other's throats so that they're always going to be willing to try to outdo one another to please Jenkins. It's so sick. Long story short, too late. Garrett ends up at the soiree, and who does she find but Jenkins? And who does Jenkins introduce her to but Ethan, who is pretending to be someone else there. They're there for a special secret reason. And also Jenkins wants to see how Garrett and Ethan react to one another. So they try to be very cool when they're in front of Jenkins, but once Ethan pulls her into a stairwell that no one knows about, of course their passion heats up right away. And that's where the chapter ends. Looking forward to 11. See the pumpkins we've got attempting to go back there? Yeah. It's something. We'll see what happens. They're kind of prolific and are spreading all over the backyard. It's kind of a mess. Anyway, okay, chapters 11 through 14. Garrett and Ethan are in the stairwell, and it's getting hot and heavy. There is an interruption by one of the waitstaff, so it kind of breaks them up, and they go back in. She helps him pick a lock, basically. She's writing data down, and then he gets all this information that he needs. And as someone starts to come in, he uses her as a ruse, basically. He pretends that they were just making out the whole time in privacy, which is just the perfect cover for everyone concerned. Of course, it's Gamble that finds him, and he's furious with him. And Ethan's like, whatever. And it's so interesting too. I love listening to this book, especially because I love to hear Ethan switch from the Irish accent to his like Cockney accent, depending on whether he does the Irish with Garrett when he's being himself, and then with everybody else in the world, he does the Cockney. I know I said that already, but I feel like it bears repeating. It's just so telling. It's so important. Later on, Garrett convinces him to meet her at her house, and they proceed to have the most gorgeous love scene. Oh my gosh, I can't do it justice, nor would I want to, nor would you want me to. But chapter 13, yes, so good. He's so attentive and so masterful and so careful with her because it's her first time, and it's just so beautiful. And he just, again, the respect and the love, I just love it so much. Something else critical happens at this part of the book. Ethan takes the information that he and Garrett collected that night at the soiree. I think my chair is sinking. That's kind of scary. Okay, I don't want to fall backwards. Wouldn't that make for an interesting vlog? Anyway, he goes to this gentleman who's always been rivals with Jasper Jenkins. And as Ethan's explaining all of this information that would show that Jenkins is doing really bad things to try to make the Irish look bad, to keep the government going a certain way, all super underhanded, very dangerous, good people, innocent people will die. He realizes that this gentleman is not giving him the right reaction. And Ethan at that point decides this guy's in on it too. And unfortunately now this guy knows that Ethan is aware. So it's funny though, Ethan is so enamored with Garrett and is just so distracted by his feelings for her. I don't think he's being as careful as he normally is, considering that now pretty much everybody who's like upper crust muckety mucks know that Ethan has this information on him. I mean, Ethan is a marked guy. He's public enemy number one right now. He goes to this really seedy area of town, and as a train starts to pass, it's the perfect cover for Gamble to shoot him in the chest. And as he falls into the Thames, which is one of the worst places you could go, the water is so disgusting that nothing can live in there. The last thing he thinks, of course, is Garrett. So what's going to happen next? We'll find out in chapter 15. Chapters 15 through 18. Oh man, there's a lot happening in this. It's really intense, really passionate. You can really see the love that Ethan and Garrett have for each other. This is where it really starts to ramp up for me in terms of just incredible story. So Garrett is not aware that Ethan has been shot and that he's in the Thames, and she is just sort of daydreaming about him and thinking about how she would like to propose to him. Talk about your feminist gal. But she thinks maybe it would be better if he proposed to her. It's amazing how quickly she's thinking ahead when she gets a letter from Helen and says, you need to come to our home quickly. There's a carriage out front for her and it's unmarked. It's not got the Ravenel crest on it, which is very unusual. We find out that who is the person that is in need of medical care? It's Ethan, but he wanted Garrett not because he wanted her help, but because he wanted to say goodbye. He says this to her. I'm actually gonna read to you from the book. Oh, it's so good. Garrett, the first moment I saw you, I knew you were my share of the world. I've always loved you. If I could choose my fate, I'd never be parted from you. Akushla, pulse of my heart, breath of my soul. There's nothing on this earth more fair and fine than you. Your shadow on the ground is sunlight to me. Oh, I mean, come on. Come on. She vows that she is going to save him, and she gets Dr. Havelock over with some instruments that she needs, and he realizes Ethan's not going to live, and he cannot support Garrett doing insane things like trying to do a blood transfusion, which they don't understand blood types at this point in time. So, I mean, Dr. Havelock has seen some really bad things go down within an hour of a bad blood transfusion, and he's not willing to do that for Ethan, especially because he thinks Ethan's going to die. So Dr. Havelock says, look, I can't be any part of this. I have to leave. Thank goodness West Ravenel, who, it's funny, when Garrett first saw him, she actually thought that West was Ethan because they look so much alike, which makes me like West even more. But anyway, West opts to help Garrett in performing any kind of medical procedure that she needs to perform, while also cracking some hilarious jokes. He's like the Leo Hathaway of the Ravenels, in my mind. Anyway, moving on. She needs blood. She's actually going to get it from Devin, who, again, it's a Ravenel. So hopefully it's going to be a good match. I believe that it is, because Ethan was on the brink of death. I mean, she couldn't even feel a pulse, but then the blood that was coming from Devin helped. And it's amazing, like during this point when she's really trying her hardest to save him, she's like whispering to him, she goes, you're mine, you're mine. I mean, she's never felt anything remotely like this. Now, the police are the ones that pulled Ethan from the Thames. They had a feeling about it that made them not report this. And everybody's sort of aware that this needs to be secret. So the Ravenels work with Tom Severin and Reese Winterbourne to get Ethan in a private carriage of Reese Winterbourne's to Eversby Priory in Hampshire. And so this had to be as secret as humanly possible, but they get him out there, and now I guess it's just a matter of time until we see what happens. But this isn't just a who's who of the Ravenels in this segment, because we've got But Tom Severin mentioned Reese Winterbourne is there giving support. We've got Devin, we've got Helen. I don't think Kathleen jumped into the scene, but even Cassandra is trying to help out with cleaning Ethan up. And then of course there's West, who's doing a super job. Not only that, they're worried about the safety of everybody that's involved. And obviously Jasper Jenkins knew that Garrett was involved with Ethan. So now there's concern over Garrett's ailing father. So what they decide to do, this is so cute and random. They decide to send Garrett's father to Heron Point, I believe it's called, which is Evie and Sebastian's manor. So Garrett's dad is going to be at the seaside. He's going to be having a great time with Evie and Sebastian. And if they had done a novella on that, I would absolutely have been there for that. Wouldn't that have been fun? So anyway, that's the fun part. But for the most part, this is really intense, scary, and I gotta tell you, I can't wait to read past chapter 18. Let's see what happens next. I'm just realizing that this chair has a number on this wall. Oh no. I've been home again most of the day, every day. Someone is always sick, and I'm still getting back to normal. So thank heavens for this book. Chapters 18 through 21, I believe. So good. So Ethan, he's had fevers. It's gotten up to 105. He is in the grips of it. And West is encouraging Garrett to take a break because she hasn't slept in 3 days. She hasn't eaten all day. It's been like 12 hours. And he winds up drugging her tea to get her to go to bed. And she wakes up with the knowledge, she believes, that Ethan has passed away and that she didn't get to say goodbye, and she's livid until she gets to the room and she sees him, and West, as quickly as he can, makes his exit because man, is it fabulous, the two of them back together. Of course, Ethan is still very weak, but that doesn't mean he can't show a little appreciation for Garrett. It's lovely. So he's working on recovery, but he's also touring around Eversby Priory, which, as you may remember, was home to 12 monks. It's a very peaceful, relaxing place. Garrett is noting how great the thinking is that she can do while she's walking around the grounds every day. But Garrett's going around the grounds too, secretly, because he's supposed to be resting, and he is finding out everything he can about every part of the building that they are staying in, because he is certain that it's only a matter of time before someone comes to him to get him. And he's telling West, actually, that, and he's using his Irish accent, interestingly, when he's talking to West, but he's talking to West and he's talking about how Jasper Jenkins has spies all over the place, and even the Prime Minister is aware, but he doesn't like to know because he doesn't want to be clued into too much. He figures it's better if he doesn't know, quite frankly. So, you know, if somebody that's working on the house, they've got millions of carpenters coming and going, they've got servants, if anybody talks to somebody who's even a bartender, or, I mean, Jasper Jenkins has people in every corner of England doing his bidding secretly. So Ethan believes it's just a matter of time. But he and West have a chance to really connect, and as like brothers would. It's just lovely. And West even takes Ethan into the portrait gallery. Ethan gets to see his biological father, not for the first time actually. He's seen him one other time in real life, and he just never liked the man, and he felt badly for what that man did. His mom totally disrespected her, didn't have any interest really in taking care of Ethan, but if she was willing to go and be in his bed, then Ethan's dad was willing to give them a little money, but nothing for free, of course. Ethan is now aware that he is the direct descendant of a very fabulous bloodline that goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. There are famous warriors in this line. It's very interesting, but Ethan's still sort of standoffish about the whole thing. But he's really warmed up to West, which is neat. Now, the other thing that is going on, I'm sure you're shocked, but it's a whole fortnight, a whole 2 weeks before Ethan is able to get Garrett in his bed. She's very reluctant, and they have a beautiful love scene that's very different from anything I've ever read, because they're trying to be super careful with his wound, and so there's not a lot of movement, at least not outwardly. Is that weird? It's unique, it's steamy, it's good, it's different. Anyway, one other big thing, Garrett shares with Ethan, or Eaton as she refers to him, that's his Gaelic name. She tells him that she loves him, which, surprise, surprise, who is shocked? No one. But it's lovely that she gets to tell him. So now we are basically setting up for the end end of the book. I can't believe it's almost over already. I finished the book. Oh, it's so good. Oh, and yeah, I'm sick again. What else is new? But honestly, this book has gotten me through. I'm so done being sick, and I'm so sorry. It's like I started this 18-week odyssey and I got sick for half of it, or somebody's been sick in my house for half of it. But anyway, let's talk about much more fun things. This fabulous, fabulous book. So towards the end, we are, I believe it's chapter 22 or 23. Garrett and Ethan they're having a picnic, a beautiful picnic, and he is sharing with her that he delivered important papers to her. And she's like, how did you do that? And he says, well, I put them in the back of the picture frame that I gave you. He had a picture of a monkey in his apartment, and Garrett thought it was kind of humorous and she wanted it for herself. Well, when he gave it to her, he was smart enough to keep some of the papers left over that they had gotten from the safe together, and he also put in his will. And at this point, we discover that Ethan is very, 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 very wealthy, because he wasn't a catch enough as it was, right? I mean, this guy has it all. He is he's invented a bunch of locks, and he's got the patents on them, and he is extremely rich. And this is before he's even gotten that property in Norfolk that's belonged to the Ravenels. Holy cow. So anyway, they have a lovely time on this picnic, and I mean a lovely time, if you know what I'm saying. So then we fast forward to that night, and Garrett's trying to read, but she's not really able to relax. So she goes to the library, but she hears noise. It's like some geese outside are being bothered, and then she hears footsteps inside. So she decides she's gonna take her whistle, which, you know, Ethan gave to her at the beginning of the book. She always has it on herself as a talisman. Well, she takes the whistle out of her pocket and she's running to the front because she knows that she could alert everybody in the house if she whistles. But somebody knocks her to the ground and they tie her up, and it turns out it's Gamble and another guy, and they go upstairs to kill off Ethan. But Jenkins says he wants Garrett unharmed, so they are apparently not going to harm her, supposedly. But anyway, as they get up there, they realize the two men are scuffling. The man that was with Gamble that was supposed to be dispatching Ethan, they're scuffling up there, and then she realizes Ethan is in the bed and he's not moving. She's very upset, but all of a sudden some more fighting ensues, and she thinks maybe it's a butler or who knows, but she realizes as she goes to the bed, it's not Ethan in bed, it's the other bad guy, whose name obviously I had not bothered to remember, and I'm so sorry. But he's in bed, he's all tied up, and Ethan is beating the tar out of Gamble. Man, is he angry. And West pops in and with another servant helps get Ethan off of Gamble because he was beating him to a pulp. So anyway, West also apparently, so not only is he sort of a hero in this instance, and by the way, he did give his blood to Ethan, and he's helping out in surgery. And he also had a third henchman in his room, and he used his powers of being a farmer apparently and just having a good physique and beat that guy down. So West is really a hero in this book. I mean, he's just fabulous. He admits to Ethan at the carriage right before Ethan and Garrett go to London that he does fancy a gal and he could see himself getting married someday. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. So West then goes and takes a telegram to the post office, I guess, that they're going to send it to Jenkins. It's supposedly from Gamble saying that we took care of the package. We've got a little surplus goods we're going to deliver to you tonight. So and Jenkins believes Gamble is going to bring Garrett to his home. So he's like, all right, fine. So anyway, Ethan arrives with Garrett, and he has his little newsboy cap that is, I'm sure he looks insanely hot, in over his brow, and the servants don't know Gamble from Ethan, so they assume that it's Gamble and they let him in. Ethan actually has Garrett by the arm, like behind her back, trying to make it look like he's Gamble, and Jenkins doesn't even really look up. But Ethan takes Garrett into Jenkins's office in his home, and then he explains, like, it didn't go the way you thought it would. And oh my gosh, Jenkins is shocked, but he says, you know what, I should have figured that you'd be the last man standing. I figured it wouldn't be Jenkins, and then I figured it wouldn't be Gamble. But then Ethan says, I didn't kill gamble. And Jenkins is disappointed by that because he's like, well, if he couldn't kill you after 2 attempts, he's no use to me. Just terrible. So anyway, Ethan does the best thing he can, which is to say, before I came to you, I went to the post and I delivered those papers that I saved. And by sunup, everybody's gonna know how corrupt the police department is. And Jenkins is lighting a cigar as he's saying this, but thankfully Garrett is sort of observing everything, and she realizes that Jenkins pulled out a gun when he went to go. It was like hidden inside the cigar lighter, and Garrett slams a poker from a fire into Jenkins's chest and knocks him out. And man, isn't it cool how Garrett gets to save the day towards the end? She saves Ethan's life. I mean, how awesome. And how many times does she save his life in this book? I mean, I just love it so much. So anyway, they deal with Jenkins. He's done for in so many ways. And then it's really just a matter of getting back to life. Havelock and Garrett, they come back together, and Havelock apologizes for not helping Garrett out, but she respects his decision and she understands. She is missing Ethan though. He is busy testifying, he's being interviewed, all of the police department, not all of it, but a lot is just falling down on the ground around him. They're even offering him positions because they think he would be amazing as like a head detective with 12 of his own guys under him, and it's just incredible. But Garrett is missing him desperately because she hasn't seen him in like almost 2 weeks, and she's sad because the whistle that he gave her, Gamble and one of his henchmen actually stomped on it on the ground and ruined it. And so she was devastated because she didn't even have that with her to remember him by while he was busy all over town. But then at the very end, he comes to her and he says that yes, they offered me a position in a house, and I said I would only take it if they had a horse for my wife. And she's like, oh my gosh, a wife. And he goes, I'm not going to be doing this conventionally, which, I mean, what could possibly be conventional about them? A head detective who is also a bajillionaire, his wife who is a doctor in the 1800s in London. I mean, how cool is this? Instead of giving her a ring, he gives her a whistle that says, whenever you need me. And it's just like, oh, I love it so much. You know, that he's like, I can't be away from you. I love you too much. And will you be my wife? And she can't even say anything, but all she does is she tries to blow the whistle like in assent. And she realizes she can't blow the whistle because she's smiling too hard, and that's where it ends. And, oh, it's just so good. Okay, so I'm rating this book 5 stars and talking about the song. I haven't talked to you about that yet. It's funny. I've been really having Gavin DeGraw on the brain while I've been reading this book this week. I think it's because it's so funny. Ethan's talking about how he's a prison guard's son, or at least that's what he thought. And it reminds me so much of one of the first lines of Gavin DeGraw's big hit, like 20 plus years ago, I Don't Want to Be, where he goes, I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard's son. But that's not the song I think should be the song. Thinking about Gavin DeGraw, there is a movie called Tristan and Isolde. Maybe you remember it. It was really big around like 2005 or so maybe. And the song We Belong Together is so epic. It's sung by Gavin DeGraw. I feel like it would be perfect for Ethan and Garrett because the two of them are just such strong people. And this song is just about intensity and intense love, and that's what they have for one another. Now, the end of the song is a little bit sad, so obviously it doesn't work perfectly, but I feel like most of the vibe really jives well with this love story, so I'm gonna stick with that one as my choice. We Belong Together by Gavin DeGraw from the movie Tristan and Isolde, and I will have that linked below. You can even see the music video, which is quite grainy because it wasn't as good quality back then. So 5 seemed like that long ago. Anyway, I digress. Now I'm going to read you the author's note because this is so darn cool. Okay, this is from Lisa Kleypas. Dear friends, although all my books are a labor of love, this one is especially close to my heart because it was inspired by a magnificent real-life woman, Dr. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson. Against great opposition, she earned a medical degree at the Sorbonne in 1870. In 1873, she managed to become the first licensed female physician in Britain. The British Medical Association promptly changed its rules afterward to prevent any other women from joining for the next 20 years. How do you like that? Dr. Anderson went on to co-found the first hospital staffed by women and became the first dean of a British medical school. She was also active in the women's suffrage movement and became the first female mayor and magistrate in England, serving in the splendid town of
Adelberg. The Thames was so contaminated by sewage and industrial chemicals in Victorian times that tens of thousands of London residents were killed by cholera. In 1878, a pleasure steamship called Princess Alice collided with another boat and sank. Over 600 passengers died, with many of the deaths blamed not on drowning, but asphyxiation. According to the account of the time, the Thames water was hissing like soda water with baneful gases. In modern times, the Thames has been transformed into the cleanest major river that runs through a major city in the world and is teeming with fish and wildlife. Although the conspiracy plot in Hello Stranger is of course fictional, there really was a secret and unauthorized team of agents supervised by Edward George Jenkinson. He ran clandestine operations from the Home Office, often competing with Scotland Yard. Jenkinson was dismissed in 1887 and his force was replaced by the official Special Irish Branch. As someone who gets a little weak-kneed at the sight of blood, it wasn't always easy to research various aspects of Garrett's work, but it was always fascinating. The history of blood transfusions was especially interesting. Early recorded attempts at transfusion used sheep or cow's blood, that must have gone well, transfused into human patients. The experiments didn't go well, to put it mildly, and the practice was banned for about 150 years. Scientists and doctors began working on the problem again in the 1800s with varying results. Then in 1901, Dr. Karl Landsteiner of Austria discovered the three human blood groups, A, B, and O, and found that you couldn't mix blood from incompatible individuals. Until then, successful blood transfusions depended on whether you were lucky enough to be receiving blood from a compatible donor. How crazy is that? And who wouldn't want to get blood from West Ravenel, as long as you're the right blood type? Sorry, I just read you so much, but I just thought that was so cool. I don't usually see author's notes in her books. And again, maybe this just shows how much she loves it too. I love this book so much. Eloisa James, I feel like she's an author that often does author's notes, which I really appreciate. I love learning a little bit too. So I'm gonna have to read Eloisa James again. That is the end of Hello Stranger. I'm already missing it. I'm already missing Ethan and Garrett. I don't feel like they make much of an appearance in the rest of the books. I'm looking forward to West's book next, and that is Devil's Daughter. So you know who's going to be in that one too, Sebastian and Evie. I cannot wait. Only 3 books left in my vlog series. I can't believe it. Maybe I'll actually do well. Who knows? I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying whatever it is you're reading. And until next time, thanks so much. Take care. Bye.